Good evening, everyone. I request all of you to please keep your videos off and your audios muted till the interactive session. Uh, a special welcome here to Himanshu Chaubey, who is the keynote speaker here for today's session. Mr. Himanshu is a graduate from HNLU Raipur in 2013. And as you've received the profile already, you might have seen his areas of interest already. Uh, he's working in Supreme Court. He's practicing in Supreme Court since then. A lot of the questions, as you might know, are focusing on how he has built up his career as a first generation lawyer. So we'll focus on that. And thereafter, he has cleared the AOR exam, the one jiska bhi the results were published, the 2019 exam. So a lot of the questions are focused on that after that. Mr. Himanshu, the students here are of first and second year. So that's the level that we're dealing with. And since we have less time, I will leave the floor to you now. And we can have the interactive session at the end of it.
I hope I'm audible.
Yes.
So, hi guys. I have been, so as Srishti just told you, I've been practicing at the Supreme Court or in Delhi for the past 7 years. And so when I was in college, and initially everybody enters the law school thinking that we'll get a good job, and unless and until you have a legal background, the thought process is that we'll enter the college, we'll enter law school, we'll get a good job with a good package, and then there'll be a sense of security. So initially I also entered with the same thought process, but I think somebody's mute is okay. Yeah. So I also entered with the same thought process, and but then in my first and second year, I got the chance to read Constitution as a subject, and because of Constitution, I started developing this inclination towards litigation, and it so happened that some of my friends in law school were from legal background, in the sense that their fathers were lawyers. So I used to hear a lot of stories as to what happens in court, and how did they reach to where they are now. So I slowly started developing interest in litigation, and yeah. So even in my law school, I hardly did any internships in in law firms. I think I only did one internship in a law firm, and I persisted with internships with lawyers and law firms which deal in litigation, and that's how I ended up entering litigation as a career choice. Now, the biggest fear that people have when they think about litigation is obviously the money, especially if you're a first generation lawyer. And yeah, and that problem is there because initially litigation is not a very well paying, litigation in law is not a very well paying option, especially if you're a first generation lawyer, because there is nobody to back you initially. So, but I took the chance, and with God's grace, it has been good. You just need to persist for the initial 7-8 years, and then you just have to have patience, and things will work out in if your efforts are if you make proper efforts. Now I'll start with the questions that have been referred to me by Shrishti, and I think the first question is, what is your story and how did you start, and were you always sure of your career plan, or you decided on it later? Now, I was sure of litigations from my second year. and I never thought about anything else. From second year onwards, I planned everything, thinking that I'll end up litigating, and so I planned my internships, I planned the subjects that I took in my honors papers, and everything was revolved around litigation as a career choice. I did not study corporate law as a specialty because I knew that I was not going to work at a firm. So yeah, and as I told you, the story was that because I was surrounded, my friends, some of my good friends were from legal background, and their fathers were lawyers. Some of their fathers were senior advocates in the Supreme Court. So hearing all this, just it created an inclination in me to go for litigation. Now, the next question that has been referred to is how difficult is it for a first generation lawyer to stand in Supreme Court, and how to find clients, especially at the earlier stage, and how to convince him to hand over his case. Now, the first part of the question is how difficult it is for a first generation. It is difficult. I will not deny that it's not difficult, and I will not give a rosy picture that no, it's not difficult. It is difficult because first of all, there are two things in play. If you have a legal background, you have seen since your childhood that how things work, and that is a very big thing when you even when you want to approach somebody as some prospective client, because if you have seen your father working as a lawyer somewhere, you understand how things work and how somebody is to be approached and what needs to be done. And that is where a first generation lawyer will have a drawback, because he has to start from scratch for everything. He has to understand things on his own. And so yeah, it's not easy to be a first generation lawyer, not only in Supreme Court, anywhere. It's not easy to be a first generation litigator in any court in the country. Be it Supreme Court or a regional high court or a district court, anyway, it is going to take some time. You just need to persist with it. Now, how to find clients? I'll say that it's an organic process, in the sense that how it has worked for me is that if you persist with a particular office and you know work at an office for a longer period of time, you get in touch with people. And and legal and law is a litigation circle is a small circle. Like the people who are serious litigator, or who are known or seen in the court, it's a very small community, and word go around, and you get to meet people when clients are coming to meet your boss, and slowly you develop connections. And obviously, if you have some initially, there will be these friends ki yaar notice bhejte and things like that, and so things develop slowly. And what helps you in gaining traction is uh, write a lot of articles. Even write a lot of articles, try and get it published, try and get as much exposure as you can get. These are the things which makes you visible, right? And when people read articles, they get to know, they see your name, uh, they will automatically approach you. And you, there is always one case which makes your career, right? And if you get the chance to have that case initially in your career, then obviously that helps in getting clients. But I will say that each it's not there is no straight jacket formula as to how to approach client, because it also depends on your personality as to whether you're an introvert or an extrovert. So it's very there are different factors which plays into how to approach clients, but more or less I'll say that it's a gradual process which takes its own time. There are very few people who get clients in the first and second year itself. It takes 3-4 years at least to gain that a little bit of base, to create a little bit of base, and from there to create a launch pad, and where from when you can get clients on your own. Now, the next question that is there is that how did I start working in the Supreme Court directly? before starting to practice in the Supreme Court? Is it essential to have an experience of the lower courts? Now, again, the first part of the question is how did I start working in the Supreme Court directly? Now, the primary reason for that is that if somebody seriously wants to pursue litigation, I feel Delhi is the place because of the sheer number of forums that are there. See, a Supreme Court lawyer is not somebody who only practices in the Supreme Court. We also practice in other forums which are there in Delhi. But there, every appellate tribunal or every there is a high court in Delhi. That's a big advantage. The same city has a Supreme Court as well as the high court. Then there are different national commissions. National Consumer Forum is there. Then there is National Green Tribunal is there. There are n number of tribunals and commissions which have their own independent practice. So that is the reason that a lot of people chose Delhi, and that was one of the reasons that I chose Delhi to start my practice. Plus, honestly, I come from Chhattisgarh, and somewhere that's a personal choice. I'm not saying that I am too good to practice in Chhattisgarh, but I didn't want to, and I thought that Delhi gives me a bigger exposure, so that's why I chose Delhi. I chose to start. I chose Supreme Court to work at Supreme Court from the start itself. Now, whether you need experience of a lower court, uh, it does help because what happens is when cases come to the Supreme Court, a lot of things have already happened, right? The whole groundwork is laid. We don't really have a lot to play with. It's more on law rather than on facts and procedure. And a lot, I'm sure you would not have read the procedural laws till now, but that procedural aspect of law you get to learn in lower courts, and if you it's always beneficial to have the experience of a lower court before you go to a higher court. I wouldn't say that it's essential. I never worked at a trial court. I still don't practice much in trial court. And if you join an office in Supreme in Delhi, more generally people also have works in trial court, so you will end up getting some experience there also. It's a plus if you get an experience, but I wouldn't say that it's essential that one can't work without having an experience in the lower courts. Now, the next question is how did I get an opportunity to work with a senior advocate? It so happened one of my friend's father is a senior advocate, and that's how I got in touch with him. And then I did 3 internships with him uh, in my 5 years, and then I ended up working with him for I think 2.5 years. I worked with him, and that's how I got an opportunity to work with a senior advocate. Now, otherwise, see, I think internships play a big role in getting an opportunity to work with any advocate, because advocates don't go to colleges to hire people. It's generally by reference, or if you've worked with somebody, that you will get a job at any office. And so yeah, that's how I got my opportunity to work with a senior advocate. And uh, I'll suggest that the more you do your internships in law offices, if you're even if the internship was not done with a senior advocate, but if that particular advocate with whom you interned can get you in touch with a senior advocate and can get you a job there. Now, the next question is what subjects should one focus on if they want to, and the competitions that one must focus on if they want to do litigation. Now, constitution is a must because everything revolves around constitution, right? It being the current norm, it being the primary document. And then I would say all the procedural laws, you will study it slowly. I think in the fourth and fifth year, third and fourth year, you'll end up studying the procedural laws, the civil procedure code, the criminal procedure code. They are very essential if you want to litigate, because procedure is the backbone of litigation. And then evidence is one of the subjects which you need to read properly. Then there are labor laws, I think. But every subject has an importance in litigation, because obviously every dispute, if not resolved, ends up in court. So but these 4 or 5 subjects, the procedural laws of CPC, criminal procedure code, civil procedure code, evidence, and constitution are essential. You can't litigate without at least having a basic knowledge of these subjects. If you are good in constitution, then it helps a lot, because your you know you start analyzing laws differently if you know your constitution well. So would recommend giving a lot of importance to constitution if litigation is something that you want to pursue. And as to what all competitions one must focus on, moot court competitions, obviously, because uh, moot court competitions give you an opportunity to work on a problem. There is a set problem, and there are sites that you have to take. So you end up hmm, applying your mind in a particular direction as to whether you have to fight for or against the case that has been given to you. So if the more such competitions that you take part in, your mind starts working accordingly. So obviously, moot court competitions help. Uh, you should also try and write as many scholarly articles as you can, because that also is it develops your mind in a different way. As in you, because there'll be a lot of research that will have to be put in for writing those articles, and re, and it helps you even as a lawyer, because it gives you an extra knowledge of that particular field of law in which you have written an article. So moot courts and articles have their own importance. Obviously, moot courts are a bit more important because they give you a problem, and then you have to apply your mind towards that problem. Now, the next question is, and also one of the parts of the question was what all skills are needed. You have to have a good command over the language. There are no two ways about it. If you don't have a good command over the language, it's very difficult to actually be in the legal profession. Be it litigation or anywhere, you have to have good command over your language. Plus, and it's not with litigation, the difference is it also has to be, it just can't be writing. You should be good in speaking English also, and you should know what words are to be used in your legal language. It doesn't have to be just your normal English. It has to be, there are very specific words that are used in legal drafting or legal arguments that you should have a command. And the more you read, the more you learn, obviously. Now, when I see the drafts that I used to make in my first year, I'll probably laugh at it. But it's so that's why it's called a practice, right? Because the more you practice, the more you learn. But having a good command over language and good oratory skills obviously gives you an edge over others. And obviously good reading speed, because you'll end up reading a lot. Maybe we end up reading thousand pages in a day or two if there is a matter to be argued. So if you have a good reading speed, then obviously it's a good skill to have. Then next question is, how different is litigation setup from moot court? Very different. It's completely different. The moot courts are not the setup that you get in a litigation in courts. First of because the way you prepare for moot courts is very different from the way you prepare in litigation. In moot courts, it's a small 2-3 page problem that is given to you, and there won't be a judge whose whole aim is to bash you up as it is there in moot court competitions, because we all have been there, and I think the primary task of the moot court judge is to drill you, which is not the case in courts. It's much more relaxed actually, unless and until you're before a judge who's a bit, who likes to question a lot. Otherwise, judges like to hear, and and obviously it's not somewhere there's not a lot of shouting. It's not something that you see on TVs. It's very different from that, and especially Supreme Court, because uh, you're arguing on law and everything. But yeah, it's different from moot court competitions. Nothing. It's not like what you see in moot court competitions. Then I think next question is a bit of a repetition in the sense that which activities such as mood, etc., shall one focus on? I think I've given I've talked about this, and I think each activity has its own importance. But yeah, try and do as many moods as possible because it develops your mind accordingly. Then one part of the question is what should a first year student do to become good at mooting skills so that he can also participate and prepare himself for international moot courts. A first year shouldn't focus on international moot courts in the first year itself. Take it slow. First, try and do some good national moots before you think about an international moot. And I did my first moot court competition, I think, in my third year, and I ended up doing 4 more by the time I graduated. And but don't and what you can do is read a lot and try and see as many moot court arguments as you can in your college. I'm sure there'll be intra-college moot courts or any moot court competitions that your college conducts. Then try and see how people argue and try and imbibe those skills. So certain things are, inherent in the sense that some people have that quality in them. So, but I think reading and watching people how it's done gives you a good indication as to what needs to be done, and that prepares you. But take it slow. First, do national moot court competitions before you think about international moot court competitions. And the next question is, how does the mechanism of earning money works? Is it same like a normal job? It is same like a normal job in the sense that you get your salary on the first day of the month, but the salary is not comparable to what you would get in a normal job. The harsh reality of litigation, being a litigating junior, is that the pay is less. There are no two ways about it. It's very less, especially with the amount of effort that you'll have to put in. I don't think it's comparable. It's proportional to the work that one needs to put in while working in a litigation office. And but yeah, other than that, it's like a normal job if you're in a litigation office. What is different is that to compensate for the low salary that legal law offices give, your boss will try and get you some money from the client if you worked well in a case. The boss might just ask that he should also be paid for this matter, and there are these additional incomes that you can make. There is another advantage of a litigation office is that you are free to take your own clients from the first year, even if you're working in an office. So even if you do some miscellaneous work like drafting a notice or something like that, and you can earn extra from that's the extra income that you can make while working in a litigation office. Now, how to deal with nepotism in the field is the next question, and there is actually I don't think there is a way to deal with it. And I think people's nepotism is an ugly reality of litigation, at least, because, and as I told you, I think I said this earlier also, for a second generation or a third generation lawyer obviously has a huge advantage over a first generation lawyer, because obviously they have connections already, and then they have an office set up, and what I will be in 6-7 years, the person might be starting with that. So, but you need to accept these realities. So my seniors in court always say this, that law or the litigation profession has space for everybody. You just need to create that space. You have to work your way around. You can't blame nepotism for not making it, right? If you have the skills, if you persist with it, and if you make your wholehearted effort, everybody has space. You just need to create that space for yourself. And then one of the questions is the other part of the question is, are there any issues related to harassment of female litigants in the court, or are there mere rumors? Now, I'm a bit confused with the question. Are they talking about female lawyers, because litigants are the parties? But I'm guessing it's about female lawyers. Then there are. I have never heard of in my 7 years. I have never come across as a case where there was harassment, sexual harassment as such. But yes, there are these snide comments that are passed, and again, this is also, it's a harsh reality that it's a very male-dominated profession. Like when you go to courts, you see that there are very few females who are practicing lawyers, and it's not a reflection on whether females are good or not. They're brilliant lawyers. It's just a reflection of how the profession works. And but things are changing. Obviously, we have a lot of female senior advocates now in the Supreme Court, and there are a lot of females in my batch who have also cleared the AOR exams this year, and the numbers are increasing with every passing year. There are, I have, there are obviously these one-off cases of harassment where, in the sense, some comments have been passed, but those serious cases I haven't come across as of yet. But I wouldn't say that it's just a rumor. Obviously, a lot of things do not even see the light of the day because people don't want to bring it up. But these small cases are always there. Then is it required to have a good financial background? As many say, earning are a handsome. It's a plus if you have that. If you have a good financial background, it obviously gives you a cushion. Like for example, I didn't have student loans to repay, so that was one of the reasons that I could think of litigation. If I would have had student loans to pay, I would not have the cushion to choose litigation as a career option, because pay is low, as I said earlier, and if you have some backing, you might have to take money from your father initially, and if that backing is there, then nothing like it, or you will have to learn how to survive in the amount of money that you get. I wouldn't say that every office pays less, but most of them do. The average salary of a first year lawyer in Delhi is 20 to 25,000 rupees. And 25,000 is an upper limit, in the sense that good offices will pay you 25,000 if you're a fresher. And as and so and it is less to manage in Delhi. So if you have a good solid background, then obviously it helps you. Now the next is it good to have an experience in law firms and litigation firms before actually starting to practice independently? If yes, then what benefits does it give? Now, it does. Working in a litigation firm or in a law firm has an advantage. First of all corporate law firms also have a litigation practice. So all the big firms have a litigation team which only deals with litigation. So even if you want to choose litigation as a profession, it's not necessary. Okay, so I think I've been prompted that less on time. Uh, it's obviously the advantage that you get working in a firm is that you understand how to deal with clients, how to be and how to approach clients. It gives you a good exposure when you deal with big clients, right? And it helps you in formulating your approach towards clients, because there is a backing of a firm there, and it's a good exposure to have if you want. And if you get an opportunity, you should first try and work at a firm, and yeah, it does add value. Now, what are the advantages to take up litigation as a career option over others such as judiciary? First, the biggest advantage is you are your own boss. Eventually, not initially, but eventually, that's the aim that every litigating lawyer has, is to run his own office. then and the sheer adrenaline rush that you get when you argue in court and when you get an order in your favor is, I think it cannot be matched by anything, and it gives you another level of high when you do well in court. So plus, if you get through the initial shortage of money, sky's the limit. If you can make good in, if you know you're good with what you do, and you can earn, you know, there is no limit to the earning capacity that you'll have eventually. So, but other than that, the only the advantage over judiciary is judiciary also has its limits in the sense that, you know, no, the working conditions are not. That's my opinion, that working conditions are not as good in lower judiciary as they could have been, and I think that's one of the advantages that you have that litigation has over judiciary. Now, there is a question on HJS examination to enter judicial services. Honestly, guys, really don't. I have never focused on judicial services, so don't have much input to give on this. But from what I know, that every state has its own examination, and if you want to pursue judiciary, work for 7 years and then apply for it. Now, 14th, the next question is, what type of cases do I deal with, and what is the scope in different types of cases one can make a career in? From my experience in Supreme Court, which field in law will see a hike in the near future? Now, I primarily deal with insolvency and bankruptcy cases, and I deal with criminal cases, I deal with arbitration cases, and there is no specific field. Every case that comes under the sun, we deal with it. So, but yeah, right now it so has been that insolvency and bankruptcy code is something that we've been dealing with a lot in the past 1 year or so. Now, from my experience, I think again insolvency is something that is, you know, boomed. It's a separate practice in its own, and that has a lot to do with, because a lot of companies are going bankrupt. So therefore, insolvency practice has increased. Arbitration, I think, is an evergreen subject in today's world because everybody wants to, you know, arbitrate outside the court. So arbitration is also a subject that you can focus on. And then there is one evergreen subject which will always be there. One evergreen field is criminal law. It is not going away because crimes, with all due respect, crimes are not going away. So criminal law is something that will always be there, and it's good money also. So yeah, that is one thing. Now I think that next part of the questions are AOR exam and designation. Now, what is the procedure for becoming an AOR? You have to practice for 6 years before you are eligible to give the exam. There is a written examination where we have to write 4 papers. The first paper is practice and procedure. Then there is drafting. Then there is professional ethics, and then there are leading cases. And we gave the examination last year. It takes about a year for the results to come because the senior advocates of the Supreme Court draft the paper, set the paper, and they also check it. So that's the prerequisite of becoming an AOR. Other than that, there is no prerequisite. Anybody can give an AOR examination. Yeah. Some insights on the working Supreme Court and the position and rights of an AOR. So what an advocate on record is that in the Supreme Court, only an advocate on record can file a case on his name. So you understand. I hope you understand the concept of vakalatnama, or the name being, a case being filed in a lawyer's name. Only an AOR can file a case in the Supreme Court. It's not that nobody else can argue in the court. Even a non-lawyer can argue in the court. But when a matter is being filed, it can only be filed by an advocate on record. And how the Supreme Court works is that AOR is, I'll say that it's the backbone of the whole institution, because even if a Supreme Court is to, even if a CIDAD is to argue a case, he can only be engaged by an AOR. That's what the rules say. So everything goes through an AOR in a Supreme Court practice. Now, are there any particular subjects one should focus on in the university to clear the AOR exam? I think it's too early. Honestly, thinking about giving the AOR exam is a bit early in this university. You obviously have a good grasp on the leading or the major case laws that are, taught in the during your course time. I think that's a good thing to have a good command on leading cases, because that's a subject while giving the AR exams. Otherwise, I think those 5-6 years of practice will give you enough experience. Uh, a lot has to do with experience in these examinations rather than prior knowledge. Yeah. Then how to prepare for examination? Uh, you have to prepare these 4 subjects, I think, a month or two prior to giving the exam. One needs to read a lot, get back into the habit of writing, because we have not written anything for 5 years, so everything is typed nowadays. But the exam is a written examination, and everything is to be written 100 marks paper, and 4 back-to-back papers. So that's something. But again, I'll say that when that stage comes, that is the time that one needs to focus into what is to be done for the examination. Is there an opportunity to work for government that is having a fixed salary while being an advocate on record? It depends on the state in which you are. There are certain states who pay fixed salaries, but generally there is no fixed salary for an advocate on record of a state. It depends on, it is case to case basis. Now, what edges does one has over other advocates? Because Supreme Court advocates, as I told you, because you are the only, that class is the only class which can file a case in the Supreme Court. Is there any scope of joining judicial services post having practiced as a Supreme Court? Obviously, if you clear the exam, if you give the exam, you can clear it, and you can join judicial services if you want to. But after investing 6-7 years, generally it doesn't make sense to jump the ship. Try and persist with it. I think it will bear fruit. And can an advocate on record practice in lower courts? Obviously, there's no bar on you practicing in other courts. The only advantage is you are the only person who can file in Supreme Court, but you are free to practice in each and every other court that is there in the city. Yeah, I think I am done with the questions.
All right. I think we had to rush past the second session because of the time limit that these Zoom meetings have. But I think most of the questions are covered. Is there anybody else who wants to ask any additional questions? If there's anybody, they can unmute themselves and ask any question that they want. Did you get any questions from the students?
Yeah, I did get some questions. There was some question, how much does senior advocates pay their juniors? There are certain senior advocates which pay up to 1 lakh, but like Mr. Sibal and Mr. Singhvi and all, they pay really well. But you end up working with them once you are already 4-5 years into practice. They don't take freshers. So yeah, and what are the characteristics they look for while appointing someone as a junior? Good command over law. They will see your CV, obviously where you have worked. If you have done LLM, obviously it adds an advantage in getting appointed in those offices. Will you prefer us while giving internships? I think at that too. It depends a lot on your CVs. I wouldn't give any assurances right now, but obviously if I get a CV and if somebody wants to intern with me, we'll see when the time comes. Then how did you prepare for it alongside your practice? I don't understand. I think it has to do with the AOR exam.
Yeah.
I took break from my practice for a month and I studied for it, and that's how I prepared for it. We often hear that juniors don't get requisite attention of the court. Please throw some light on this. See, it depends on the judge. There are certain judges who give opportunity to the juniors. There are certain judges who don't want to listen to juniors. So yeah, that problem is there, that juniors don't get as many opportunities that they should. But depends on judge. Or it's not that nobody gives you attention in court. Then yeah, these are the only questions that I've got.
Okay. I thank you so much for being here and being so patient with our questions. One question which was there in a lot of mails that I got that I deliberately ignored was, how do they get in touch with you after the session if they want to ask anything, or if they want to get internships or anything else that they want to clarify? So I think the best channel would either be LinkedIn. He has a profile on LinkedIn. So that. Not an active profile, I think.
Yeah, I don't use LinkedIn that much. I think they have my email ID. If they have any queries, they can send an email across.
I'll circulate
That would be
the
better.
in that
Yeah.
manner. Yes, and you would not get any preference if you apply for internships unless your CV is good enough. I can vouch for that. He is very unbiased when it comes to his professional requirements. So make sure your CV is updated and make sure that you are prepared enough for being grilled also if you want to go for internships with him. That much I can vouch for. So if I don't think anybody else has any questions, and I think the meeting's time is coming to an end. So thank you so much for being here, and I will let you know if there's
Pleasure.
any follow-up.
Yeah. Pleasure is all mine. Thank you. Thank you for bearing with me. Yeah. Okay.
Thank
See
you.
you guys. Bye.